Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this edition of the Real Wealth Solutions podcast. Today, we are joined by the guys from Blue Oak Capital, located in the Houston area. We have with us Cody Laughlin. We have with us Brian Alfano, and their partner, John Batey, is taking care of dad duty and family obligations at this time. So, guys, welcome. We really appreciate you taking the time out, especially evening hours, to make this happen for us.
Hey, you can say it, Darren. John is slacking. Don't give him that. Don't give him that freedom, okay? He's slacking, but
okay, the professionalism just went out the door. No problem, man. Let's get down to business.
Yeah, whoever's not
Appreciate y'all having us.
That's it. No, hey man, appreciate you guys letting us come on the show, man. Really, it's always a pleasure to be able to share our story and always speak with you guys. So appreciate that.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, just each of you take a couple minutes and just kind of share, maybe before we get into the bulk of what we're going to talk about today, just how'd you get in real estate, why real estate, professional background, maybe what you're doing currently for a W-2, any of all the above, and just kind of how you got to this point currently.
Go ahead, Brian. Just kick it off, man.
Yeah, for sure. Well, again, appreciate you guys having us on. Happy to share my story. Try to keep it short and sweet. So for me, I got into real estate in, I would say 2018 is when I really started thinking about it really hard. At that time in my life, I was in my late 20s and really reflecting on what's the thing that was connecting everything, all the successful people that I found in my life. So, how did a lot of people who had not only financial freedom, but time freedom as well, how did they get there? And then the people that had gotten there through another means, so maybe it wasn't real estate, what did they use to keep them in that state? What did they use to keep that, income coming in and that time freedom? And it always kept going back to real estate. So at the time, about a year before that, a partner and I, we had started a coffee shop concept here in Houston, Texas. We had been working together for a long time, for over 10 years, and had mutual interest in working together and continuing to work together after we finished our current business. So we started a coffee shop business, and I had got to watch him and see some of the commercial real estate that he was purchasing, some small, triple net retail spots, and just kind of seeing his success. So I got the bug and, picked up every real estate book I could find and started it at first by looking at single family, even though I really enjoyed multifamily in particular, just because I had a lot of limiting beliefs. I was just telling myself all the things we all tell ourselves, I don't know anybody, I don't have a track record, not experienced enough, I'm too young, I don't have enough money, just kind of all the stuff that kind of goes through your head. But so I did that for a little bit, and eventually decided that after doing some stuff in that field, it just wasn't the right fit for my personality. Still think it's a great asset class, and you can build tremendous wealth, whether you're wholesaling or you're doing fix and flips or buying rentals. But just didn't align with my personal goals, where I was trying to get to by the time I was 35, what I wanted to do by the time I was 40 and beyond that, and creating that generational wealth. So late 2019, early 2020, decided to have a mindset shift and, jumped into multifamily. And very fortunate enough to meet two great guys, Cody and John over here at Blue Oak. They had just started their thing and also joined a mentorship group, which we're all a part of, the Wheelbarrow Profits, Jake and Gino program. And I guess you can say the rest is history. And that's what got me to where I'm at today.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Cody, I want you to share a little bit about yourself, because that does lead right into one of our first questions in regards to partnership and how it formed. So if you would just tell us about yourself first.
Sure. Appreciate that. So, I had a very traditional upbringing, like most of everybody. Story, I grew up in a household that was very big on education, had two working class parents that just really instilled that into us very young. And so, just followed the script. You go to school, you make good grades, you get a good job, and, you start planning for your retirement in the future. And I followed that model, and, I graduated in 2008 in a degree in healthcare and came to Houston, Texas to start that career. And, the plan was to move up the corporate ladder. And, everybody recalls the Great Recession, right at 2008, 2010, 11, and 2010 comes along, and my wife and I, we were wanting to move to a different part of Houston. So we tried to sell our very first home that we'd ever purchased. And, the real estate market was in the dirt, we just couldn't sell it. And so we became an accidental landlord. We had to put a tenant in there because we couldn't afford to pay two mortgages. And had no idea what the heck we were doing. Just all we knew is we just needed somebody in there to help pay that bill, and then we could figure it out. And around that same time, I was also observing the people around me that had been working 30, 40 years that were at that retirement age, but they couldn't retire. Their retirement assets had just been decimated from the recession. And I was just like, man, this just doesn't make sense, right? Like there's got to be a better way. And so I started studying how to invest in retirement accounts, how to invest in the stock market. And somebody saw me and they said, hey, have you read this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad? And I read it and it resonated with me because, again, I found myself being an accidental landlord. And that really kind of was eye-opening for me. That completely changed my entire trajectory for my life. And so just started following the real estate entrepreneurship path there, and kind of detoured a little bit, took some expensive lessons chasing some shiny objects along the way, but ultimately just came back and found myself fully committed to real estate investing, and now here we are. And so, as Brian alluded to, met John in late 2000 and 19, excuse me. Definitely had a great alignment of interest, and we both had the same motives as far as our investing. And so we launched Blue Oak Capital early 2020. Started kind of continue to build on our systems. As Brian mentioned, we met him midway through this year, and he was a great fit for where we were in our business and what we needed to add to our team. And here we are.
So I have or had, whatever you want to refer to it as, the pleasure of knowing you, Cody, and John before I knew Brian, and then knowing Brian, and then you guys came together after that. And I'm like, man, that kind of makes sense to me. And I love how you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and you became an accidental landlord. And Brian had a partner that he knew was already into real estate and saw the benefits of it, and they just start linking up. So everybody's story is different, and how they got to where they are is just amazing to hear those different paths. So I guess what was it about Brian that said, we really want to link up with these guys? And then I'd like Brian to just touch on, what was it about, John and Cody that attracted you as well? I mean, was there something technical? Was there something ethical? What did that look like?
Because he buys really nice shirts.
Well, I was just say Brian and John both have this like really beautiful set of hair that I don't have, and I was just like, I want to be around those guys.
Yeah, that's Greg. That's Greg for me. Yeah, that's it.
That's what it is. No, when I started my journey into commercial real estate in early of 2019, I was kind of flying solo, and very early on knew that this was a team sport, but didn't have much of a network. And so as I was building my network and building the aspects of the business through a different partnership and a different opportunity, that's how I actually got connected with John. And John at that time had been a passive investor in, several other syndicates. And, he saw what I was doing and kind of saw my vision and my passion for, this investing space. And he calls me up one day and said, hey man, let's sit down and have some lunch. And said, so we met, and he was like, look, we both are on the same path. We're both husbands, fathers. We both are in this to get our time back and have control of our time. Why don't we combine efforts and do this together? And that it took a couple meetings, but, just kind of condensing it, but you get the point is, we definitely saw that alignment of interest, right? That same vision. And, I'm very fortunate that I have I still maintain a W-2, but I have a W-2 that was very flexible, allowed me to have a lot of time to still focus on real estate. And John, unfortunately, had the opposite. He didn't have a lot of time, but he had some resources that I didn't have. And so, that's kind of how that pair happened. He was like, look, I want to leverage your time. You can leverage my resources, and then we can move. And so that's exactly what happened. We started analyzing deals together. We started underwriting deals together, property tours, and it was just a great fit, man. And we had great communication. And so, that kind of carried on. Again, we launched Blue Oak in early 2020, and we just kept building on that foundational partnership. And then as our network continued to expand, as the business continued to grow, even though we hadn't transacted yet, we were still, we were launching, the meetup had been going for a little time, and we were kind of expanding it, the podcast, and, just continue to try to meet as many people as we could. what we were realizing is we were spending a lot of efforts and time in maybe one or two lanes, but we were missing out on these other opportunities. And then along comes Brian. I think, as he alluded to, we were all joined the Jake and Gino community early 2020. And we're all coincidentally here in Houston. So we meet Brian, or Brian actually met John through a Neil Bawa boot camp. And through that, they discovered, hey, we're in Houston. Hey, we're a part of Jake and Gino. Why don't we get together and talk some business? And, Brian came in and immediately we identified like, hey, here's where we're at in our business. Here's where we're needing help with. And Brian just fit that mold perfectly. He was able to come in and say, yeah, here's where I see some areas of improvement. Here's where I can help add some benefit. And, again, it was a great alignment. And from there, that's kind of how we felt like it was a great fit. And I don't know, Brian, I think we got pretty good communication skills. I mean, ever since the beginning, it was always felt like a natural relationship, natural partnership, which is so important when you're working with other people in the space. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's apparent to me that you realized partnerships was going to be necessary to succeed in this business. And that comes up a lot in the education and in most books, that it's much harder to go at it alone. And then I've seen you guys like accelerate really well, just in terms of visibility. You're very well polished. You're giving back to the communities. You did that little LinkedIn thing about how to maximize your LinkedIn time, which I found very valuable. Got me kind of kicked in the butt. Can you talk a little bit about any particular systems, or even if it's not just particular systems, kind of the mindset behind? My note is, building bigger systems than you currently need, because it seems like, you guys haven't transacted yet, but you've got the foundation there for when that thing lands. You're going to be in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sorry, Cody. I was going to real quick. I was going to go back and answer Darren's first question. I mean, Cody pretty much said everything. Cody pretty much said everything I could say. To me, the most important thing in a partnership isn't really the dollars or, the titles and things like that. It's, do you like who you're working with, period.
Absolutely.
Part of the reason I've been, I started off in the restaurant hospitality industry, and nobody as a kid grows up and says, man, I want to work in restaurants. Nobody says that. Very few. One of the reasons I stuck around so long, and, with my other business partner who we own the cafe concept is strictly because of our relationship. Period. Like, that was pretty much it. It wasn't because I couldn't have made more money somewhere else. It wasn't because I liked, dealing with all the stuff that comes along with being in the restaurant industry. It's strictly because we had a great relationship, and it's led to some other opportunities that I never would have thought possible. So to me, when I met John, I could tell there was something unique about him in the sense that he was just a high character person. You could tell he had integrity. You could tell he had morals. And I was like, okay, hopefully the other guy he's working with is the same way. And that was Cody. And very quickly, it was the same thing. You could tell, Cody operates with integrity. He has high morals, and he just wants to take care of the people around him, whether that means he gets something in return or not. So when I saw Cody and John both had that, that alignment of interest, which made sense because they were already working together. That's exactly how I am. If I can add value to somebody and help in any way, that's to me what it's all about. So, I always tell myself my purpose is to serve others. And, these guys clearly have that same alignment of interest. So, once we all met, it was a really easy natural connection. And then once we made things a little bit more official and we started hanging out and obviously communicating a lot more, we went on, property tours, we went on a market tour to Kansas City, we really started strengthening those relationships and seeing like, okay, yeah, like we're with the right people, and it's only a matter of time before good things start to happen. So
there's nothing that solidifies a relationship than spending 3 grown men in a hotel room somewhere where you've never been.
Oh, wow.
That's how you know you got a good partner.
There you go.
Not all in the same bed, by the way. Just
but to go back to Greg's question, to kind of turn the corner a little bit with systems. I mean, that's one of the things that I wouldn't say I'm like an expert at, but I do like to build systems. So, in the real estate industry, a lot of the it's an older industry, and a lot of the things that are new in the industry are, have to do with tech. So real estate's a little bit dated in that, a few years ago, a lot of this stuff didn't exist, the software platforms and things. So I like to look at things and really go, okay, there's some sort of system in place, because obviously we wouldn't be doing it, but how do we optimize it? How do we make it better? How do we leverage technology so that, once we get into a position where there's volume, whether you're talking to a large amount of investors or you have a lot of deal flow, how do we really maximize 3 people's time? Because it sounds like a lot. People are like, oh, I only have 1 partner. I wish I had 3 or 2. It's still, you guys are in this business. It's still sometimes not enough, when you're dealing with investors and you're talking to brokers and there's a property manager calling you and you're talking to insurance, and, there's so much that goes on to it that, looking at all that and saying, okay, how do we optimize it? I mean, how do we be patient? Like, it's not like, Brian's going to come in and in 30 days, all of a sudden there's magic. It's not really that way. Like, these things take years to build sometimes, So I was on the MFI and Summit this past week with Dan Hanford, and he was really highlighting some of his systems. And he said the same thing. Like, it's impressive when you see it now. You're like, this guy's amazing. But he's like, yeah, this took me like 5 years to build or 3 years to build. So it's just about taking it day at a time and seeing where you're at and try to, as Greg said, try to put systems in place that are scalable.
Brian, if I can, I'll piggyback off that a little bit. And it's about efficiency, right? And I think, as Brian was alluding to, you can put only so much time and effort into the day and into the work that's required to be in this space, and even amongst 3 partners like ourselves, I mean, as he said, I mean, there's days where we're like, crap, man, we still have this many things to do. So the more that you can create those systems and put those systems in place and allow you to be efficient to focus on the areas that are either your strength or that are going to build your business, that's what's really going to help you excel. And I think, Greg, to your point earlier, I mean, that's what's really helped us to develop quickly over this past year is every aspect of our business and everything that we do, we're always looking for ways that can be delegated out, right? How can we outsource this or have somebody else do this so that way we can focus on the bigger important things, finding deals, finding the investors, things like that, building those relationships, right? So it's finding ways that we can continue to systematize our business and put it on auto drive or autopilot, if you will, while we're focusing on the bigger important tasks. Does that make sense?
What I love about what you're saying and what Brian just said is, and I heard this on a podcast in the last 2 months, and I don't even know who to give credit to for it, but Brian made the comment, building systems that are scalable. But the comment that this person made on the one I'm referring to was, you want to build your systems huge to begin with so that you're not working on actually scaling them once you get on 50, 100, 200, 300 units. And you guys are daily actively doing the mundane tasks, it sounds like to me, that have to be done to manage an asset. And along with all the other stuff that you're doing with your podcast and raising capital and creating relationships and tours and all that stuff. So that's one thing that stood out to me, but it sounds to me like you guys are already there, really. I mean, you could just plop a 200 unit in whatever you're using currently, CRM and everything else you've got going on. That's kind of what I hear when I think about how you guys came together. While John's really got a techie mind, Brian's really got a techie mind. Brian had that business acumen from his coffee shop business that just kind of brought a new element. And I guess maybe you and John weren't necessarily going and looking for someone, but when John met Brian, it's just kind of like, oh, this is something we need, didn't even know we needed it. Maybe that's kind of how it happened.
Exactly. That's exactly how it happened. I mean, it was just, as your business evolves, and you start meeting the right people, you start when you learn who somebody is and what their strengths are, you can figure out, and this is something I challenge everybody, is as you grow and develop in your business, it's always important for you to identify your strengths and identify the areas that you need help with. And it's okay to say you need help. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody needs help. And so I definitely, you're exactly right. It was just a natural fit for us. And, we saw Brian, his background, we're like, man, that would be a perfect way for us to focus on this area, and without slowing us down from the other areas. Cause I think that was the sticking point where we were at. We were like, okay, we need to go spend time here, but we can't forget about this. And so we'd spend time here, but then this would so carrying all those hats, it just really, really helped to fit that. But, I want to go back and make a point, Darren, to what you were just alluding to is success leaves clues. And my big thing to people is like, look, don't come in here and try to recreate the wheel. There's so many great resources out there and so many great successful people out there that already have built a big business that are sharing that with you. Man, just follow the script. Like when I got started, like I was a big follower of the Michael Blanc, Joe Fairless, and, I read Joe Fairless's syndication book. And I mean, I really just followed his framework to that T, in building the network, building the investor relations, putting a team together, all those systems and things that he talked about. I just followed the script, and sure enough, like everything just kind of fell in line. And, the point being is like Brian was alluding to, going to, conferences with like Dan Hanford and all these other industry leaders. I mean, they're sharing their knowledge and their experience for a reason. Take it and use it. You don't have to go and try to figure it out on your own or whatever. It's there for you. Just follow the script,
I think part of the challenge is sticking to one script. I mean, because there's lots of good scripts out there, and that can be a tendency to to be a book jockey or something. Read the next book that tells you to do this. Read the next bit, and then you're never actually implementing any of those. And I'm a big fan of get takeaways from different things and apply them to your life as you see they might work in. But I think there can also be a danger of just trying too many things without ever committing to any one singular path and just executing on it.
Well, I'll make a comment on that if I can, Greg. And here's what I would tell people to do is you got to figure out, again, what are you good at and what are you not good at? And when it comes to the real estate business in particular, it's really, when you think about it, it's really simple. You need deals and dollars. Okay. So if you don't have money, you got to go find it, So how do you go find it? So like, that's where I would kind of start the framework, right? Is drill down to that simple. Okay. If I don't have capital, where am I going to go find it? And that's where I'm going to put my focus, because it don't matter if you have a good deal or not. If you don't have the capital around you or the network around you, you're not going to be able to close the deal. So, and quite the opposite. I mean, if you have the network and you have the capital there, but you don't know how to go find deals, well, great. Okay. Then go focus on broker relations, go focus on how to find deals through different avenues, whatever. But, you got to identify that in the beginning. So that way you don't go down the rabbit hole. Because eventually it's easy for people in the beginning to have that tendency to want to spread themselves too thin and try every little thing, but you're going to fizzle out and burn yourself out really quickly. So,
I think once we, I'll go ahead and say, put our egos aside and understand that, it is much easier for me to partner with this guy and this guy and this guy or girl and spread out those responsibilities and go get things done. Because you talk to so many people that their biggest fear is partnering with someone for whatever reason. Either they got burned in the past or they're just not an extrovert or whatever the excuse is. But and I have, we all have colleagues that we talk to on a regular basis that they still struggle with stuff like that. Even so much as like, if you're investing in a high barrier to entry market, your best thing for you to do is, if you've got, go find a partner that's got boots on the ground somewhere else where it's an easier market to get into. People hesitate doing that as well, and then they'll just spin their wheels for months, years, possibly.
Yeah. And what happens is they get frustrated and they end up giving up, right?
Correct.
They end up tapping out,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, listen, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Brian, did you want to make another comment?
No. I mean, I'm agreeing with y'all. I mean, I think you have to find partners. It's the only way to be successful in this industry.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like you guys have split up the work and you're all executing at a fairly high level as much as you possibly can.
Yeah. You can't be an expert in everything. It's impossible.
Right. Yeah. So now, if deals, money, and probably some level of credibility would be another very important thing. So, it sounds like you guys have filled those seats properly. You feel pretty confident about it, and you're executing daily on trying to accomplish each of those things. And it doesn't happen overnight, but I mean, you've seen some results. And let's talk about a little bit in particular for people that are trying to, maybe find partner, or they have a small organization and they're looking to grow. What have you seen as some of the biggest benefits of some of the systems or strategies, even, like we talked about the LinkedIn thing, that have paid off, more than you expected?
I think with systems, you had kind of asked this question earlier about, reading a lot of books and, switching things back and forth. Anytime you pick up something new, you have to give it time. And, to answer your question specifically, you just asked, you don't get any of the benefits if you don't take your time with it. The LinkedIn thing's a great thing, for example, where, if you get on LinkedIn and you're like, oh, I'm trying to attract capital, or I'm trying to meet brokers, or I'm trying to meet vendors, property managers, whatever. If you're getting on it, once a week and not spending enough time on there, and you're like, oh, this isn't working. Well, I don't think it's necessarily that it's not working. It's just that you're not investing enough time and energy into it. It doesn't mean you need to spend 8 hours a day on something like LinkedIn. I would not recommend that. But at the same time, you have to give any new system you pick up, the time, and allow. Same thing with relationships. You have to give them time. So time is your best friend, I think, when it comes to real estate. It's one of the things that I was kind of attracted to the commercial space a little bit more about. Is it seems like it's moving fast and can very often, but it's also realistically, especially because I come from the restaurant industry where things are measured in seconds. It's a very slow moving process. And if you nurture your relationships and you nurture your systems and you stick to something enough to see the benefits of it, then that's when you really start to go, okay, yeah, it's been 12 months, it's been 18 months, maybe it's even been years, but you get to look back on it and people look at it from afar and go, wow, that's instant success right there. Look at him. He's got, 500 units. He's just killing it. But what they don't know is that it took him 5 years to buy those. And then maybe he spent 3 years learning how to buy them. So it's been 5, 6, 7, 8 years before he got to that point. But it just looks like it's an instant success. And it's the same with systems. It's the same with relationships and partnerships. You just got to nurture them and make sure you're planning to be patient.
Yeah. I think also when it comes to systems, Brian, I think you also got to track it as well, right? You got to track your progress, right? So, I mean, if you implement a system and you're committing yourself to 6 months, 12 months, whatever it is, well, if you're at the same spot or very close to it a year from now where you started, either you have to ask yourself, well, was I implementing the system correctly, or is this the right system for me? But how do you know that if you're not tracking, right? Just like our KPIs on your properties, you have certain key performance indicators that you're tracking to make sure that you're executing the business plan, make sure that your property's staying, occupied and things like that. You're keeping the revenue stream coming, right? Well, it's the same thing in your business and your systems, right? For example, your CRM, your investor CRM, right? If your goal is to, get to 1,000 investors in your database, you can use different systems. We use Active Campaign for our CRM, for example. Well, what messaging, what communication, what email campaigns, how are you keeping connections with your investors? How are you attracting and building new relationships with new investors? Everything has to be measured and tracked. And I think, that allows you to pivot, right? So if you're tracking and you can see where you're spending your energy, if you're spending a lot of time and effort in these systems that after some time you realize that you're not getting the return on effort, okay, then it may be time to pivot. Or again, you may just need to refine your strategy. But the point being, I think it's important. You have to track what you're doing, or you never know where you're going.
I know that's a part of this. That's the second part of that question is, how do you know when to pull the plug? Is it because your tracking has showed no results? And then do you even look back and go, well, how much effort am I really putting into this? Not just the tracking, but the entire process of how that goes. But is it, do you know when to pull the plug just based on what your tracking results say?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think it may be kind of difficult to answer, pointedly, but I think it starts with what Brian was mentioning earlier. Number one, you have to get educated in the system that you're implementing, right? And I think a lot of times, and I used to be bad about this, right? I would buy into a platform and I would try to wing it, right? I wouldn't invest the time to go through the tutorials or really navigate the platform. And I'd get so frustrated with it because I'm like, well, man, why can't I do this? Or why can't I figure out this? And And if I'd have just went back and utilized the resources available on the platform to learn how to use it effectively, I could have saved myself a lot of time and effort, So I think it starts with getting educated on the system, the platform that you're using. And then from there, whatever your goal is from that particular system. And again, I'll just use the example of our CRM, our investor relations, for example. And Brian, I know you can chime in here is, if you want to grow your database to 1,000 investors and you want to attract new leads into your funnel, you need to put those systems in place. And what I would tell you is whatever that, you need to put a time frame on it, right? And I can't put a time frame on it here for you now, but like, let's say for 12 months from now, for example, if you've only added 100 new investors to your database, then it's time to, again, reevaluate. But I think it would be all very specific to the particular system that you're using or your goal that you're defining. But the point I would make to that is always keep watching, always keep tracking. And then you have to decide for yourself, is this return on effort really yielding me the results that I'm looking for? And if not, you need to answer those two questions. Is it user error or is it the system itself, but
just, you made a comment earlier, Cody, about, everything's pretty much already been done in the multifamily space, from techniques to how to invest, syndications, Joe Fairless. So it's almost the same thing in systems too, unless something new comes out. Did you guys identify, hey, so-and-so uses this, let's get their input on how they're using it and why they like it? And did you go around to people that you look at as successful and feel confident in the feedback you get and say, hey, let's interview them and see why it works for them, and maybe it'll work for us? So for any platform, app, or CRM, did you take that route, or do you take that route?
Absolutely. I know Brian and I both, we were big fans of putting out polls in the Facebook groups, social media groups that we're a part of, and the network of other experienced people we're in. And, I know that's exactly how I started. When I got started, I had no idea about systems, what systems I needed, where should I invest that time and effort? And that's exactly how I did it. Reached out to my network and said, hey, what are you using for investor relations? What are you using for a CRM? And, and just kind of built it from there. And, just rely on the experience of others. And I mean, again, this space has enough people in it and enough people willing to help to rely on. You don't have to go out there and try to figure this out on your own,
Yeah, I think a lot of investors, when you're new, think that there's some sort of, and I know I've had this thought as a younger investor, like you see these guys that are successful, these girls that are successful, and you're wondering what their secret sauce is. Like, what's their secret? And the answer almost every time is just hard work. It's not that they have some tool you don't know about, or they're using that tool in some way that, you don't know about. It's just that they're putting a lot of time and a lot of effort into implementing that system and maximizing its capabilities. And, time and effort, that equals success right there. You're going to get some results anytime you put a lot of time into something and a lot of effort into something. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's just really important when you're implementing systems or looking at systems. Is yes, ask around, kind of see, don't reinvent the wheel. Don't go buy something that nobody else is using, or invest in something that is, nobody else has used before. Just, if you talk to somebody, they're successful, they're using it, you see it works for them, just go ahead and do the same thing. It's really the best option for you.
Hmm. What were you, was there anything that you gave up that you were surprised that you were willing to let it go? Or then once you let it go, you were like, oh, this isn't so bad after all. I'm just curious, like underwriting for me, that would be like, I would have a hard time outsourcing underwriting, but I'm coming around a little bit to it because I realize that it's not necessarily that I would expect the underwriting to be in complete alignment with how I might approach something, but it does increase the quantity potentially. So it allows you to get to the point of elimination faster.
Yeah. I'll use an example, if I may. Brian, unless you had something, did I cut you off?
No, go ahead. I was going to mention the
Okay, okay.
podcast, virtual assistants, all kinds of stuff. I mean, you can go.
Yeah, I'll use the first big one for me, and it sounds kind of simple, but it was so impactful, was our newsletter. So I started a newsletter back in 2019, and look, had no idea on what I was doing with marketing. It was plain Jane. It was very, bland to the eye, if you will. But my most important thing was, hey, I just got to get it out and get something to my investor database that I was trying to build, right? And this goes to leveraging strength of partnerships as well. So along comes John. John and I start working together, and John says, hey, why don't you let me take the newsletter? Well, John, being a passive investor in multiple syndicates, I think at the time it was like 9 or 10, John was subscribed to these hundreds of syndication lists, right? These investor lists. And what he did is he took that newsletter and started piecing together the things that drew his attention and the thing that like really captured him and kind of got him engaged. And we started piecemealing it together, right? And it was such a relief for me because now I don't have to worry about drafting the newsletter, putting it together. I can go focus on underwriting a deal while John's working on the newsletter. And now, I'm gonna brag a little bit. Our newsletter is top notch. I mean, I think so, a little biased, but it's beautiful.
You can tell John wrote it.
Yeah. But it's impactful. It has great resources. It has great information. It keeps people drawn in, and we constantly get great feedback on that. So it gets a lot more engagement from our investor database than what it was before when I had it. So Greg, to your question, that was such a relief for me because now not only is it improved and enhanced, but it's also getting more investor engagement and a higher conversion rate for opens and things like that. But that goes back to the investor nurturing. But the point being is that was such a relief for me because now I can go focus on things like calling brokers, building those relationships and things like that. And I think, Brian, you were going to allude to the podcast as well. And I'll let you speak on that since you brought it up. Go ahead.
No. I was going to say, I mean, you're definitely spot on. Our newsletters and most of our emails get about a 40% open rate, which is, if you know anything about opening and emails, it's very good. And like you were going to mention what you had alluded to, the podcast, you were talking about systems that have really implemented things. And this was already done when I came in, but I noticed it very quickly. One of the things you hear very often is, I want to start a podcast, but there's a lot that goes into it, right? It's finding guests, inbound, outbound requests. There's the recording, the planning, the editing, getting it on YouTube, getting it on whatever platform you need to do. You got an intro, you got an outro, you got all this stuff. That's a lot of work, right? And that's what scares a lot of people from having a tremendously impactful podcast, not only to build relationships, but to educate the community. But Cody, he's got a virtual assistant that I wouldn't call it hands off, but they definitely take out a lot of the work. And one of the things I'm working on too is figuring out a way to, because I handle basically podcast gets posted, but then I'm the one who handles like making sure that our investors and the people on our social media platforms and just in our database know about it. Is how do we get more people to see our show, right? So figuring out what type of systems can I put in place. Can I then basically put down like a checklist or, record a video on how the things that I'm doing to get it on the website, to get it on this, to get it on that, and then sending that to a VA and having somebody else do it. That way, the goal would be in 6 months, we wake up and the podcast is posted and it's on the website and it's on social media and we didn't lift a finger to do that, right? It just magic. It's magic. It disappears. But you have to think through those things and be patient and, have some trial and error. But I would say those are some examples of some systems that we've tried that have been successful. Failures, I would say, just in my short term, platforms and different things like that. We tried to use Asana for a while, but I didn't think we had I don't know, we just weren't very disciplined about using it. Not that we weren't tracking our to-dos and KPIs and stuff like that, but we found some other tools that we liked instead. And so, we've definitely tried some stuff and, I guess you can say failed at it, but we also got some stuff that has worked pretty well.
That's,
Podio is ours. Tried Podio, never.
And Keep
never
Notes? Keep Notes or Notes? What's the Google, the Apple?
I'm familiar with that.
I don't know. It's
Evernote?
No, it's not Evernote.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with that one.
Trello. There's like a million of them. And that's the thing is at some point I'm like, maybe if I just like use the memo app that came with my Samsung and made a list and looked at it twice a day. And I'm having great luck with that. So, find what works and stick to it.
Yeah, whatever
That's a
works.
great thing about the podcast, because my wife, Kim, does a tremendous amount of stuff for us.
And nobody
Does
sees.
a lot of the social media,
Yep.
does our marketing, does all of this legwork that nobody really sees. And, that's probably something that we should review and determine, is this now her best use of her time? Because I'm not against learning things so that you know how to work, because it certainly helps you hand it over to somebody else. Because the steps that have to be done, and you can be like, no, this is not what we had in mind, and I know how long it should take because I did it for a year. So there's certainly some value to knowing enough about it so that you can tell whether you're being taken care of or not. So, no, good point. That's something we might have to look at.
Hey, it's Darren from Real Wealth Solutions. If you'd like to know more about our passive income opportunities, jump on to realwealth.solutions and hit that schedule a call button. We're always happy to talk about our multifamily and flip projects and to answer any questions you may have. Again, that's realwealth.solutions. We look forward to hearing from you. And now back to the podcast.
Yeah. I know this is a point that we've kind of already touched on several times already, but just it's relevant when we talk about systems as well. For some people that may be kind of difficult, the idea of putting systems in place or whatnot. Everybody's brain is wired differently, right? You have people that are very OCD and very A personality, and things have to be a certain way. And you have other people that are more freelancers, right? They go, and when you restrict them to having to be things this way, they just don't operate very well. And my point to that is, listen, if you're not comfortable with the idea of putting in systems, or that's not your strong suit, go find somebody that is. Find somebody that is that person, but maybe doesn't want to go out being the one to be at the networking events. And there's plenty of people out there like that. They want to handle the back office. They want to do the systems. They don't want to be the face of the company. There's plenty of people like that. So, just go out there and find those people. Again, identify what you're good at, identify what you're not, and you'll build your business around those two things.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's personally just one of my things for 2021 is doubling down on the things that, I think bring the most value to our partnership. So, and, you still want to grow, but, for the networking and everything, you can't just like completely cave into.
I love the way Nick says it, right? You gotta find a way to work on your business, not in your business, right? And in order to be successful, in order to grow in your business, no matter what stage you're in, you're going to have to get comfortable with putting systems in place, but also delegating responsibilities. Now that doesn't mean just get careless and turn your back or whatever. You still have to pay attention, but the point being is, like, you're limited to your own abilities and your own strengths and your own time. And if you can't recognize that and get comfortable with the idea of letting other people come in and helping you, it's going to be a long road.
Yeah, that's the whole premise of the E-Myth, right? Working on your business, not in your business. And that's one of those things that's just hard. It's even hard for me sometimes, but like doing commercial real estate and then doing my coffee shops, I just had to sit down with the fact one day that there's going to be things in both sides of the business that I just don't know how to do, but that's okay. It's okay that I don't know how to do that. Whether it's at, the multifamily or, like I said, the cafes, because we have a team in place who does know how to do it. We hired somebody who knows how to do it. We have somebody on our team that knows how to do it, and they're doing a good job at it. And also too, with delegation, Cody had mentioned this, but the thing I like to tell myself is, like, look, if somebody does something 90% as good as you, and these are tasks, right? I'm not talking about the revenue generating stuff. That's like, investor relations are really important. Broker relations are really important. Operating asset, that's stuff you want to be really hands-on with. That's the stuff you want to focus on because it's a revenue generating task. But if it's a task like posting on social media, posting your podcast, first pass underwriting, just so you can kind of look at the deal and see if it even pencils and makes sense. These are tasks. They're not necessarily revenue generating tasks. So Let somebody who can do it as 90% or 85% as good as you, let them do it. And they're going to up their game a little bit too. And you're going to, the biggest part is you're going to get your time back, you know, and that's really the most valuable tool that we have as real estate investors, because there's so many different things to do.
Yeah, and yeah, that underwriting thing that you mentioned, you know, is starting to speak to me a little bit because, you know, basically you've doubled the amount of the underwriting you can do.
Absolutely.
At least at the cursory level. So
Yeah, I don't know personally, but I know some people are using VAs to do first pass underwriting. They've either been trained or they already have the training. And to Greg's point, it's just upping the volume. And I think where we are in the market, you know, that's what we all have to do in order to have that one next deal to do.
is there anything like at our fingertips generally that you think most people are just completely underutilizing?
That's a good question.
Well,
Underutilizing.
VAs. I think
Yeah.
VAs. I mean, listen,
For sure.
in today's age, you know, if you're not utilizing VAs, you're kind of dated. And I don't mean any offense to anybody, but really, I mean, you know, it's such a great, affordable way to delegate, like Brian was saying, delegate some of those simple tasks out of your ways. I mean, you can VAs to manage your email, you know, manage your calendar, just all the things that kind of you don't think about, but may actually consume a lot of your time, that, you know, that are easily delegated. So, you know, we've found VAs very, very valuable in our business. We got 3 for the podcast now. We're looking at some other ways to leverage VAs as well. And, you know, we have plans for in the future on how to, as we grow our business, what other areas that we can implement that as well. So I think that's an area that's very much underutilized right now. And if you're not using it, I would definitely encourage you to consider that for sure.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
And I would just like add the other one in is it's probably just consistency. I mean, if you just like double down and say, I mean, like we mentioned, I don't know if we mentioned it before during the call, I'm doing the, you know, I'm on LinkedIn 30 minutes for 30 days. You know, that combined time over those 30 days is probably going to be 4 times what it was in the previous 9 months. And yeah, and I'm, you know, I've seen some results. I'm like, oh, okay. And this is because I'm, you know, I'm not a big social media guy. Sometimes it's been irritating a lot, you know, in very recent history. But there's actually, you know, a little bit different view on LinkedIn, and I kind of took it for granted that it maybe wasn't there, but I'm finding it there. So
Yeah. I mean, social media is another area that I think too that people are probably leveraging, but maybe not leveraging to its full capacity.
In the right way.
You know,
They're leveraging.
And I mean, listen, COVID. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, COVID, I think, just showed us how important social media is to networking because, you know, whether we like it or not,
everything went there. I mean, yeah, everything's on Zoom. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, you know, whether we like it or not, we are in the age of just digital, you know, networking and digital presence. And if you don't have one, you're really non-existent, you know, and you can only go to so many networking meetings. You can only have so many phone calls, but man, I can literally plug in a post on LinkedIn and within a few minutes have 50 or 100 people engaging on my post. And now I'm connecting and meeting people, you know, that otherwise I may have not come across before. So, you know, it's definitely a powerful platform when leveraged correctly. I think there's a lot of spam stuff out there and there's a lot of, you know, nonsense that shouldn't be there, but, you know, it definitely is something that I think when it's leveraged correctly, you know, it could really be powerful a bit to your business. And I tell everybody, man, 2020 was a blessing for us because even though deal flow was very slow for most of the year, we weren't doing a lot of property tours and getting out there. Man, the amount of engagement and expansion of our network and just all of the things that all the people we were able to connect with. I mean, I think Darren, you alluded to this earlier, man. I feel like right now we're in such a great position for this year when it comes to future acquisitions or future deal flow, whatever, versus where we were at the start of last year, you know, just because of building that network, building relationships, and just focus on systems and such. So, and then, you know, Greg, just to go back to your point, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of long winded here, but, you know, you touched on something that I think a lot of people as newer entrepreneurs, we get in, you hear this, take massive action. And people think that, oh man, I got to go out there and I've got to do everything today. Right. And I think, what is the phrase? People underestimate how much they can do in a year, but overestimate how much they can do in a day. It's very, very true. And the point I want to make there is you don't have to spend every waking moment of your day going out there and try to tackle every task. If you just do just a little bit at a time every day on each avenue of your business or whatever area that you're focusing on, you're going to grow so exponentially over the year. It's those small steps every single day that just continue to build your business, but it takes consistency. That's the key. Just always be chipping away at it every day. But listen, if you can't underwrite 100 deals in a day, that's okay. If you only underwrote 10, well, that's better than 0. You know what I mean? So I think people get so caught up in the idea of massive action, but they misinterpret what that means. I don't think it just means that you got to do everything tomorrow.
A lot of people mistake that for activity.
Yeah.
Before Brian made a post about it a month or so ago, we were on a call, just he and I, and he recommended this book called Make Time. And I've been reading that, and it's resonating with me big time. And, I'm very much up for probably the last year or two. I have had no problem basically turning all my notifications off on my phone to get stuff done. Or just like, you know what? You need to control it instead of it controlling you. And there's some other premises about that book specifically, but yeah, you just hit on it. What's that one thing that you need to get done today that's going to really impact your business? Get that thing done and then tackle anything else you can on top of that after that one thing's done.
Yeah.
So I'm really learning and grateful for, books like that are practical for me.
Yeah, and I would think we could add to this discussion. We're probably all involved in them. Is some kind of accountability group.
Mm-hmm.
Just a small little informal mastermind or something. There's a group that Darren's not even in it. Every morning we're hitting each other up. What are you doing today? And at the end of the day, we do a little check-in, and those can be extremely powerful and motivating to help kind of keep you on task, where you got a small band of people. You don't even have to be in the same industry to benefit from that kind of stuff. It's just getting into the same space as with other people that are trying to get shit done,
Yeah.
So that would be something I would add to, if you're not involved in, maybe, form one. Call somebody, hey,
Yes.
it could be for fitness, it could be for business, it could be for business and fitness. I mean, don't overcomplicate it. It's really just supporting each other and encouraging you to get your list done.
Yeah, absolutely. I know for like Brian and John and I mean, we have a call every Friday morning to review our week. Hey, what did we get done this week? What are the areas that we need to focus on? Opportunities we may have missed and why. And then we use that to kind of pivot and plan for maybe the following week or, whatever the case may be. And yeah, that's the one thing I love about the Jake and Gino community too, right? When you get in the community, you get assigned an accountability pod. And, you're, like you said, you're out there networking with those people, you're having weekly, bi-weekly calls, whatever it is. And, like you said, when you proclaim something and when you speak something to somebody and they hear that, it becomes, it's somebody that's there to kind of keep you in check, right? Keep you from veering off, right? It's somebody, like you said, somebody on the other end to say, hey, you said last week you were going to do X, Y, Z. What's the progress on that? It kind of puts your feet to the fire. It holds you accountable to it. So yeah, man, it's powerful.
Yeah, we do the Monday morning call.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we're about an hour in. You guys want to, touch on anything that we didn't talk about that we should have? Hopefully you come up with something, because otherwise that loaded question just is going to land on.
If you guys don't have anything, I've got another question.
Oh, good. Darren, in for the save. What's up?
Well, and we sort of touched on it beforehand, but let's, for Cody specifically, well, for both of you. John has, and I thought you were invested in some syndications as well, Cody, but what, at some point you guys became partners and you talked about, I want to be active. I want to be general partner on taking down a deal. I want to have, is it about control? is it about controlling your own destiny? Is it about your future? Because you can go find a million syndications to invest in and make good money and do nothing. So what is it about being a general partner, running an asset, finding the investors, putting the deal together, closing it? I guess just what's your thought process around that? What's the why for doing it that way now?
And I'm also invested in a deal too. I'm just not invested as many as John. John's in like I said, 11 different deals, but I'm also passive invested. But for me, my whole journey in real estate was for one thing and one thing only, and that was to capture my time back. I didn't want to be a W-2 employee till I'm 65, 70, 75, whatever the case may be, and devoting more of my time to a W-2 than my own family. Now, granted, anybody who's in this space and hears that knows that as an active investor, when you're going out there and doing these deals, it's a lot of work. So it's not like you're going to just be sitting back, hanging out, chilling, it's a lot of work. But the difference is you control where you allocate your time. And that's the opportunity that real estate afforded me and is going to afford me. And that's the vision that I see. So having said that, when I got in the business and I started to learn and educate myself, what better way than to passively invest with somebody from a successful operator who's out there doing it and be an active passive investor, right? Asking questions, looking at the business plan, watching the strategy. If it's in a market that you're close to, going to the property tours, meeting with the operator, and just really riding their coattails, right? And just learning what they're doing. It's a great, great way to learn this business if you're looking to be active. So I highly, highly encourage anybody who's looking to be active in this space can definitely consider being a passive investor as well, because you'll be surprised how much you can learn from those people. And what a better way to build relationships with the successful operators than being investing partners in their business. You know what I mean? What a great way to build good relationships, because there's a trust factor there. If you trust somebody to give them $50,000 or $100,000 and you do that repeatedly, you're going to see a return on that. So, but for me, it was, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to wrap up and just say, I just saw it as a great way to learn the business as I was building my own business and just learning the business and getting comfortable to take that next step. And so,
I think that advice gets offered to a lot of new people is, get into a deal passively. And what Greg and I take a great deal of pride in is when people invest passively with us, man, there's no question that doesn't go unanswered. And we'll, if they want a little hand holding, we'll hold their hand a little bit and just get on, maybe they're on our weekly update for the property and Greg does most of all of this. But yet they have a question behind the scenes, they can call us. It's not, we want them to your point, it's repeat business, man. It's about building that relationship so that they know when we're responsible with their money, with that fiduciary responsibility, we're going to do it again. Yeah. And so that's a great point. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, look, you got a lot of people out there that are very happy in their W-2s, are very happy in their day-to-day, and they don't want to be active, right? I mean, They, like you said, they would rather just kind of park their money somewhere, get their return, and just keep on about their day.
Or they think they do, and when they realize how much work goes into it, they're like, I'll just keep giving you my money. That happens a lot.
And that happens more than you think. It happens quite often because it is a lot of work. I mean, and it's a time investment in this. I mean, look, I've been at it for almost 2 years now, and there's been times where it's like, okay, how much further do we want to keep going? But you gotta keep working on the mindset. You got to keep building the strength, and you got to push through those, and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I mean, not a lot of people can sit back and wait 2 years before they get a deal, and listen, this is not a no money down investment. Even along the way, building the things that we talked about, systems and putting things in place. I mean, there's a capital requirement in there, and I'm not saying it's going to break the bank, but if it's hard to kind of put that money in and spend 2 years doing the work, making the phone calls, showing up on the property tours and making offers and getting declined. I mean, you're going to get your teeth kicked in. So, point being, it is a lot of work, and a lot of people get into there and they go to the guru mentorships, right? And they're like, oh man, I hear the hoorah and this is great. I'm going to be a millionaire tomorrow. And then they get in and 3 months later, they're like, holy smokes, this is not what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
So, but anyway.
That's another positive about having partners. There's three of you, so you can always pick each other up or kick another one in the ass, whatever it takes, one or the other.
Yeah, we've had a lot of those moments. I know, Brian, this is probably more before me and, Brian came on, but I know there was a couple times John and I were like, we would trade off. John, one week he'd call me and like, man, Cody, I don't know, man. And then next week it'd be me, just constantly picking each other up. But yeah, you definitely need that for sure.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, I've done the passive thing too, and I found it the same way. It was a great way to learn. It was a great way just to be like, do I even have the patience for this? If you can't wait for the return passively without thinking about, how's my money going in somebody else's hands, then you may want to rethink whether or not it's the asset class for you. So it's a great way to dip your toe in and be like, do I even like this business?
Yeah. The last point I'll add to that too, and some people may disagree with me on this or not, but I do think being a passive investor and having a passive investor portfolio does at least speak to somewhat of your credibility and experience when it comes to going to find your own deals. Now, granted, brokers are going to want to know that, hey, can you close the deals? And how do you do that? You show them that you've been a sponsor or a co-GP on something. But I think it does speak or have a little bit more weight when you can say, hey, look, I'm a passive investor in 1,000 or 2,000 units versus somebody who comes up to them and says, hey, I don't have any passive investments, nor have I done any active investments either. You know what I mean? It just, at least as a passive investor, it shows that you're in the business. It shows that you're kind of seeing how to operate the business from a passive side. I think it just carries some weight with it, so don't discount that is, I guess, my point to that.
And like Brian, to your point with tech changing this industry, there are lots of ways to invest passively almost like you're on Robinhood or something, with the click of a button. I don't necessarily recommend them, but the barrier to entry for participating in some of these passive investments has the bar's been lowered. Well, I don't want to say the bar's been lowered. The opportunity is easier than it was, 5, 6, 7 years ago. So
absolutely. And I think, I have to remind myself this all the time. The reality is we talk to real estate investors all the time, all day, right? So to us, this is very common knowledge. The average person does not understand real estate and does not know that this vehicle exists. And that's part of the joy and excitement that it's wrapped around in this business is, we get to be fiduciary responsible for other people's money and in a vehicle and an avenue that they didn't even know existed. So, passively investing and taking that responsibility is huge, and sharing the knowledge that we have with other people about this vehicle and, how the stock market isn't the only option. But you're right. It is getting easier, and, things like crowdfunding sites make it a lot easier for you to go on there, especially if you're an accredited investor. You do your registration, you find those, those deals they have on there, and you just, you park your money and go. So I think with, tech and kind of going back to that, with a lot of new technology and, being emerged in the space from crowdfunding and, other real estate investors starting to become more prominent on social media and just putting their name out there, getting good at marketing. Our goal and our hope is that we can, take some people along for the ride, whether they're active investors that we partner with, we build great relationships and we all win, or they're passive investors and they want to sit back and, just enjoy the return and not have to bank on, only doing stocks or bonds or crypto or whatever it is you're into that's not real estate. So yeah, I think that's a huge part of this business and something that I definitely enjoy. And I know it's definitely one of the reasons, Cody and John and I are all in this business as well. And probably the same for you two gentlemen.
mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
We'll start to wrap it up. And I guess one of my questions, like I always like to ask is for each of you is just touch on, Cody, for you first, because you did mention it, it's like, hey, you've been at this 2 years or almost 2 years, whatever the time frame is. How does your mind, what do you do for your mindset that keeps you going? Is there a daily thing? Is it your big why? You're just wired that way? Give me something on that. Give me some feel good stuff.
Well, I feel like, so I mentioned in my introduction earlier that I had taken some detours in when I first started my real estate investing journey, and I started chasing some shiny objects. And through those experiences, I lost a lot of money. I learned some very expensive lessons, but it took me further away from real estate. And what that did for me is it kind of hardened me in discipline. And so when I got committed back to real estate, it was hey, no matter what happens, you're not doing anything else but this. This is going to be your number one focus. And no matter how hard it gets, no matter how tough it is, no matter how bad the day is, tomorrow you're going to wake up and you're going to go do it again. So I think going through some of those hard, expensive lessons definitely hardened me and kind of now has kept me disciplined and focused. But in order to keep feeding my mindset, I definitely feel like having partners like Brian and John are just absolutely pivotal, because like you said, it's somebody that's holding you accountable. It's somebody that's picking you up when you need it. It's somebody that's helping to carry the load, which alleviates a lot of the stress. The second thing is, man, just networking with other successful people in the space. I get so motivated and inspired by people that are out there that are killing it, that are doing their next deal or making big things happen. And it's so, that just fuels me, man. It gets me excited and whatnot. And so, I think that's the biggest thing. I love podcasts. I love reading and things like that. I love personal development books, love personal, inspirational quotes. A big believer in that. When you read an inspirational quote and you're speaking it and you're seeing it every day, big believer in that. But, those are the things that I think that I do. And also I would say this too, take care of yourself. I think a lot of entrepreneurs forget to take care of themselves along the journey. And that's, look, good diet, good exercise program, but allocate some time out of your day to take care of yourself. An hour a day of just spending time for you, and whether it be meditating, whatever the case may be, whatever you like to do. I love going to the gym, maybe going out for a nice run. You have to disconnect a little bit and take care of yourself. And I think that's a huge thing.
Interesting that you mentioned detours, and you did early on as well. I'm actually reading a book called Detours, and it's written by a guy named Tony Evans, which is actually a pastor down in Dallas, and one of my favorite pastors of all time. I used to listen to him on the radio like 20 years ago. And so that just resonated with me about detours in life. But anyway, I don't want to get off on too much of a tangent there, but yeah, the physical health thing is huge for me as well, because it definitely leads to your mental health. And I think Greg and I both agree with that. Brian, is there anything that you do that keeps you going every day? Is it just this group of guys? You've been a businessman. You had your coffee shop going, and you opened up a new one recently as well. What drives you, I guess, would be my question.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And yes, I mean, to answer that, what you said a minute ago, these guys do help motivate me for sure. There are days that I wake up and just like all this, and we're just like, man, not that I don't want to do this anymore, and not to like throw the whole thing out the window, but it's just like, you're not as motivated. Maybe you're a little tired. You're like, I know we've had this conversation, you and I, Darren, but you have to learn to enjoy the journey, right? It's not so much on the results and focusing on, what you're going to get at the end of the day or at the end of the year, at the end of your life, really. The joy is in the journey. So, my big why has always been, family, my wife, of course, trying to put her in a position where we can, live, not only be financially free, but be time free. So, if we want to work, great, let's keep working until the day we die. If we don't, let's not work. We want to take a year off and spend it with the kids or travel the world. Let's do it. Right. So putting ourselves in those positions has always been my big motivating why. And for me too, it's just about, I like to try to raise the bar. Like, part of the reason I really like real estate in general is it's really challenging. I know some people are more natural than others, but every day you have a new challenge. And I personally like to be challenged. When things are easy, I get bored, just,
Sure.
being quite frank. So the idea of, chasing a new deal and, getting somebody to passively invest with you and just learning different elements of the business, it's a challenge. I don't think it's ever going to really go away, because the industry is constantly evolving. So between my family, my wife, hopefully our future kids one day, and just trying to raise the bar and be the best, dad, one day, be the best husband I can be the best business owner I can be the best real estate investor I can be. That really motivates me to do why, because just like Cody said at the beginning, I mean, I come from a blue collar background. My dad's a very small business owner. My mom's been a stay-at-home mom since I was a kid. You know, they don't come from money at all. So everything that I have that I've earned, and I want, you know, you get asked this question sometimes. I think it's in some different things, but it's like when you're dead and, you know, people are at your funeral, when somebody stands up to speak, what are they going to say about you? So literally thinking about that question and asking yourself, like, what are they going to say about me? And it's not going to be Brian, 10,000 units. Like, I mean, that would be nice too, right? But I want them to be able to say, like, man, he taught me so much. Like, he made me a better person. He was a great dad. He was a great husband. He was a great businessman, and I learned this and got this from him. So that's really what motivates me. It's just trying to be the best version of myself and knowing I'm going to make mistakes along the way. Just pick yourself up, keep pushing, so you can really set the example and just raise that bar for your family.
Yeah, I love it. Everything y'all just said just resonated with me. It's great to have a great partner. I'm like this emotionally. Greg's like this. So, you know, every now and then he'll get a phone call. They're like, yeah, it's all gonna be okay. And we just go on. That he rarely calls me for that same reason. But
you're about to get a phone call.
You need one right now.
But
not you guys. Not you guys.
I
Not
love
anybody.
how you guys
Anybody.
mesh and just leverage each other's strengths. And yeah, I love talking about the mindset stuff, man, because it just fired me up and learning different stuff from different people. And yeah, the journey. And the older I get, I'm trying to be more purposeful and intentful about that. You know, it's not just a quote, but it's a real thing. But you have to take action to make it happen. It's life by design. Don't let life happen to you. Go out there and design it. And we have that ability. So it's amazing if you think about it.
Yeah. Hey, we all have the same amount of time in the day. It's your choice what you do with it, you know?
Absolutely.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, let's leave it there. That was like a nice finishing up sequence there. Get some quick hits out of that one from our editor.
There you go. What's the name of your other partner?
We have a third one.
Oh, you do have a third one?
Oh, that. All right, John, we'll give him some slack when he.
Yeah.
I can't wait for him to listen to this. I'll tell him that too.
But this is a demonstration of why partnerships are so important, because he is able to not be here. And sometimes that is one of the great advantages of partnerships is the optionality of where people can be and what they're doing. So
Greg's done probably 3 or 4 podcasts without my presence. So it's just another example of what we have going on.
Yeah.
Gonna buy a charger for your birthday. Solve that problem.
Yeah, it's a great peace of mind knowing that, you know, you have partners that can help you divvy up the work. And even though you can't focus on the area, the business is still running, you know, and that's it's a good peace of mind.
Yeah. So highlight again. How do people reach out to you directly? You know, Brian, I'm looking at your background. One of the details that I was talking about earlier is he's had it on his screen the whole time. And
yeah, love that.
Anybody's had the opportunity to jot it down, to screenshot it for about a little over an hour. So props to you on that. Cody, you're lagging. You're similar to me. You got a little bit of furniture. How do we get?
Don't give Brian any fuel. He gives me a hard enough time already as it is. So I'm working on it. I did good by the shirts. Okay. So
yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, but no, to get in contact with us, as you mentioned, you know, Brian, Cody, or John at blueoakinvest.com. That's our email. Check us out, our website, www.blueoakinvest.com. Excuse me. If you want to learn more about how to invest in multifamily, whether you're an active or passive investor, definitely check out our podcast, Prosperity Through Multifamily Real Estate Investing Podcast. And, if you love networking and meeting new people, check us out at the South Texas Multifamily More Facebook group. And we'd love to see you at one of our future virtual meetups.
So
you're posting all those on social media, so it can be found, and that's pretty much open to the public. They just need to pre-register, and away you go.
Yeah, I think between me and Brian, I think it's kind of hard to miss us. So if you're on social media, so
You're in my algorithm. Let's put it that way.
It's obvious that Greg and I need to step up our podcast technical game. So we're gonna just do what you guys are doing pretty soon.
Yeah, right.
Background, the mics, the whole 9 yards. We talk about this, we just never do it. But
look, the most important thing is that you guys got it and you're out there giving good content and meeting great people, man. Just keep it up.
It's been a blast, man. Totally. I appreciate that, and you guys the same. So thanks for coming on.
Hey guys, really appreciate you guys, man. Always a pleasure. Thank y'all so much.
You gonna take us out with the memorized outro? Come on, Darren, bring it.
Might we see? Okay, I know Cody, you're coming to Jacksonville. Brian, you coming?
I'll be there.
Awesome. All right, Greg, you coming?
I don't know.
He might be there.
Are you talking about something else?
It's just an event, you know.
Okay.
Regular
Yeah,
event.
I'll go to Jacksonville. I can drive there.
Sweet. Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Real Wealth Solutions. You can reach us at www.realwealth.solutions to listen to this podcast and others. And if you want to just reach out to us and talk multifamily real estate, we're always willing to do that. Thanks for joining us. Everybody have a great evening.
See y'all on the next episode.